This podcast is sponsored by Memon Global. The Memonizer Combi is Memon's core product. The device plugs into your main electrical circuit, harmonising the negative fields in your home. The Memonizer Combi is scientifically proven to protect against harmful artificial radiation, electric fields, magnetic fields, geopathic stress zones and air pollutants. The Memonizer Combi is also commonly used in workplaces like offices and installed in Memon certified hotels and schools. Cables in your walls produce a 2-metre electric field which transmit 50 hertz per second. Not a lot of people know this. Basically, the electric fields in your walls stimulate your body when you're in close proximity to them, which has a negative effect on your body. The negative effects of this cause headaches, fatigue, heart palpitations, insomnia, etc. So it is important to protect your home and everyone in it. They always recommend a WLAN to be paired with Memonizer Combi, which is protection for your Wi-Fi router. Please click the link below if you want to find out more information on this product. Hello and welcome to the Love, Peace, Truth, Karma podcast. I'm your host, Leanne Brown, and today I've got the most inspirational guy that I know. What a journey this guy has been on, Joe Thompson. He's written his own book, Darkness and Light, explaining his full journey, overcoming cancer twice, through football, his past, his childhood. You are honestly going to be blown away, and such an emotional roller coaster. So another one where you're going to have to get your tissues ready. Enjoy.
If you're in China, you just know it's corrupt. They want it to be like that here.
People are pretending to be 12-year-old kids, mate, and they're not.
Yeah.
They're 40-year-old men.
Now we're getting bombarded with all these death numbers, but there's no context there.
He'd got one child pregnant, he'd raped many others, and we had evidence to prove that.
Do you think evil still exists today as it did back then? And the answer should very simply be yes.
So Joe, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today.
Pleasure. We talked about it for a while, haven't we? And
Yeah.
finally we're
I know,
gonna
yeah.
make
I'm
it
like,
happen.
can you give me a date? Can you give me a date?
I tend to be a busy man, and I think my household, there's plenty of jobs that I need to get through for sure.
An amazing household it is. What a beautiful family you have. And I am actually privileged that I've been able to get a lot closer to you over the last couple of years, really.
Yeah.
With regards to the whole situation, and we have very similar views on what's gone on, don't we? But we'll go into that a bit later if we've got time.
Yeah.
Firstly, what an incredible inspirational guy you are, and obviously the book Darkness to Light, your story of how you overcome cancer not once but twice. Had me in tears reading the book, honestly. People will look at you and really be totally inspired by you and the fight that you've had to endure. But ultimately, if they haven't read the book, don't realise what you endured as a child as well, because that was pretty tough for you, wasn't it?
It was, but I think straight away I look back at my childhood and I've got so many unbelievable memories. My mum she's a magical woman. People, rooms tend to gravitate towards her, but I was fully aware from quite a young age that she suffers from mental health issues. So I remember we lived in some high-rise flats and we lived down in Bath. And everyone, when I say Bath, they'll all go like, wow, what a wonderful place.
I've
Very
never been, I
affluent
don't
area.
know. How is it?
So the architect's amazing. And the cost of living is expensive. But if you've got nothing and you almost live on the outskirts of the city like we did, I say we were like scavengers. And we grew up, and my younger brother, who got run over at the age of 2 outside my school gates.
Yeah.
So that's the first real traumatic experience. And when I look back, I can see that day, vivid, clear as day. And it's one of my first memories. And I remember the screech and the scream that my mum had, because we was walking to school, as you see, on a day-to-day basis. And he was actually on the curb but the curb was one of those pavements where it's about that big. And the cars come around the corner, and I've been running ahead, and I've heard the thud. And then I've looked back, and my little 2-year-old brother's underneath the car, under the wheel arch.
Wow.
And then I heard that scream from my mum. The guy eventually kind of almost went over him and then reversed and then drove off.
Oh, gosh.
And my little brother's sat in a heap, covered in blood. I can see the tyre mark on his face. And
Oh, my God.
he still sports the scars from the stitches and whatnot. And he got up and he said, "Mummy, get black car." And I was like, wow. And then my first initial reaction was obviously to go and sprint, tell the teachers what had gone on. The ambulance came, and luckily for him, he had to spend quite a lot of time in intensive care.
So he got up because he suffered quite severe injuries.
Yeah,
didn't he?
well, he was still on the floor, but he suffered a broken leg. Like I said, he had markings down his face. And to see that in that moment was like obviously totally overwhelming. But when I look back at it, that was my first traumatic experience. And I think everything that I've tried to create in regards to my family has often stemmed from that. I know there'll be, listeners in thinking, well, where's your dad? Never really been around. So I've never really had that real male role model that I probably craved and definitely needed at times.
Yeah.
And I've found that later on in life through mentors and various coaches in football.
Definitely. Because just going back to your brother, you weren't happy when he arrived, were you?
No, I wasn't. I wasn't at all. I think you see it with a lot of children, don't you? The siblings and that sibling rivalry. When he arrived, I wanted him to go back to the hospital, apparently, and I did everything and anything to get him back there. So my mum had to be on guard because she was on her own to a certain extent. And I remember her always saying I had to learn how to cook with one hand because I had to have Reuben in one arm, the pan or whatnot in the other arm. And
but that
we're together now, definitely.
Yeah, I was going to say that in the book you say that, how that accident actually really brought you together.
Yeah, it was. It was the importance of family.
Yeah.
And, we talk about nature and nurture. That definitely changed my life. And I love him to death. He's been through everything with me.
Yeah.
And he's often the guy that I lean on at times.
Oh. Do you think it's made you a lot more cautious now having children with regards to obviously especially being out and about with roads? Is that, when we say that things that happen in our life and experience cause trauma, and then there's triggers, and then sort of we would react things, because I'm assuming at that young age you wouldn't have dealt with it at the time, and like you say, it's much later on now you're sort of looking back and realizing that was the first real trauma that you suffered. But I feel like there was many other things that could have caused trauma in your life with regards to your dad and what you witnessed with your mum and dad. So going back to that with your mum and dad, reading in the book, your mum was really bright. She went to university. Very
intelligent woman.
Yeah, and got a degree in,
psychology.
Psychology. Yeah.
She's a very intelligent
philosophy
woman.
and English literature.
Exactly.
Amazing. And sadly, thought she'd met the man of her dreams, and all her what she planned on, I'm assuming what she was going to do, went to shit, didn't it?
It did, and it's something that I think all parents can empathise, depending on when you have your children. You do have these dreams, you do have this big plan, these aspirations, travelling, and children, through no fault of their own, change those plans. And I look at the stuff that I witness, the domestic violence, and it's not ideal. But I know that shaped me further down the line because I saw wrong. And it's something that I always try and talk about because I'm always intrigued and fascinated by those copy behaviours. So you see patterns, don't you? Whereas what does it take to almost change that and stop that cycle? So it's something that I really pride myself on. My number one job is to be the best dad possible. Yeah. Because I've not had that in my life, and I wasn't expecting all the challenges that come with life. But if I go back to that initial thing, that was trauma for me. And there is certain things. So I'll always make sure we do our best to be as honest and open with Lula. But she's going to have to learn certain things along the way. And I always promise her, she falls down, if she doesn't pick herself up, I'll be there to pick her up. And if I can catch her on the way, then brilliant. But she's going to have to, live her own life, make her own mistakes. And that is the challenge for parents, because you want to stop them because you can see things happening.
Yeah.
But,
Definitely.
life's often the one that teaches you the best lessons.
Definitely. And, with children as well, they do say that they learn from us, not from what we tell them what to do.
All the time.
Exactly. And you're an excellent role model for that, especially with regards to, falling down and getting back up and the fight that you've had along the way. Just wanted to elaborate a little bit more into your childhood. And obviously there's a bit in the book which I found so distressing of your dad getting you up in the middle of the night. And, you were wondering where he was taking you.
Yeah. Not cool.
No.
This is something when I finished the book, I thought I'd finished the book with the chapter before, the final chapter. And I sat down with the ghostwriter, great guy, Alex Fenn, and the publishers, and they said, "You got to go see your dad." I said, "I don't need to see my dad. I've achieved what I've achieved. I've created what I've created, and I'm truly proud of that without him." But I did have some questions that I needed to have, and a conversation that I needed to have. So that instance there, I've said it a few times, and I've changed my opinion. I always used to think he was a coward, but I actually don't think he's capable of certain things, and I'd almost put my expectations on him and my standards. To ultimately, I don't think someone that can live up to those. But he got me out of, I was at my nan's at the time, and he was always man around town. Everybody knew him. Obviously, unbeknown to me, he was into all the wrong stuff, and he's been in and out of prison now for 24, 25 years.
Wow. Is he still in prison now?
He's out now.
Okay.
He's out now. But we go back to expectation that, he's probably on the clock before he goes back in, because he's fully institutionalized now.
Yeah.
That's almost like his safe space.
Yeah.
And the world outside, as we know it, is a scary place for him.
Yeah. Scary place for us all at the minute,
Yeah,
I think.
it is. It's so that uncertainty. And I think because he has that routine and he knows what his day looks like in the prison, that's all, he's become accustomed to that. So he took me out, and he almost uses me as a bit of a shield in case there was any confrontation.
As a child.
And I look at other stuff whereby I love going to the barbers. I love getting my hair cut. I love having a chat with the guys, and it's often a place where you see guys offload because they feel comfortable. But when I was a kid, one of my first memories with my dad is he come and pick me up, took me to the barbers to get my hair cut. And about 3 or 4 hours later, my mum's coming to pick me up because I've had my hair cut, I've fallen asleep, and he's left me there, And there's a bit in the book that I read whereby he took me to the police station really early on. And he said, the mum's
That's
left.
right.
She's gone.
That's right, yeah.
Which my mum, she'd had enough. She said she was going to the shop for some milk. And I think she went off to Glastonbury.
Yeah, I was like, go on, girl.
Yeah. And, I can never
and
really
they turned around to him and said,
well, where's the dad?
Where's the dad? Yeah.
Where's the dad?
And he had nowhere to
Yeah,
go.
so off you back, back to the flat where we lived.
Yeah.
And I can't really speak about, how it must feel to be a single parent every night going to bed knowing that baby might wake up in the middle of the night, baby might wake up in the morning, all of the challenges that come with it, and not being able to share that with somebody and, have a bit of breathing space. So I can only commend my mum for what she's done, and I know she's proud of me and my younger brother.
Yeah.
But I know she's had to overcome quite a lot of challenges herself. And everyone always says to me, like, where do you get your inspiration? I think if my mum can do that without, I say, the support network that I've got, then, the sky's the limits.
Definitely. Do you think, do you know if your dad had a troubled upbringing
Yeah.
to cause him to be the way he was? Because that's usually what happens. It's a cycle, isn't it?
That's it.
You've broke the cycle, Joe. That's all.
And that's what I
credit
found
to
out
you.
when I went to the prison.
Yeah.
I went in and I delved because I've heard stories. I've heard stories from various family members, but I went to the source. And I know he lies from time to time. He's got his own version of events as well.
Yeah.
But you can't have, a one-sided argument. And I thought I've got to allow him the opportunity. But the one thing that I realised, I'm one of 6 children to him.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got me and my younger brother to my mum.
Yeah.
I've got my younger sister, Libby, and then Malachi and Marley, and then a little girl, Phoebe, that I've not met. But she's like 14, 15 now.
Wow.
And the thing was, you messed up with me and Ruben. The relationship and the dynamics started off as fireworks. Amazing. That chemistry, but
Yeah.
2 loggerheads in the end. And we then obviously moved from Bath to Manchester. And you've had all these opportunities with other kids. When you're older as well, you have a lot more experience. Why have you not learned from your mistakes? And he didn't really have the answer. And I don't think he actually knows the answer.
Have you forgiven your dad?
I'm at peace with him, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Because I said before, that expectation, he's just not capable of it. And it might be to do with, something in his childhood that he's maybe not acknowledged, maybe he's totally unaware that it's affected him, but he's got his own issues that hopefully in time he'll deal with, but we'll see.
Yeah. So growing up a bit, you went to your auntie's.
Yeah, to stop me from going into social services, that was me and my brother. We got a knock on the flats and it was 2 psychiatrists that had come to take my mum away and section her. Obviously, I was 8. I didn't realise why, but we was left on the sofa. And one of the ladies from upstairs came down, and thankfully for me, my auntie then jumped on a train and brought us to Rochdale, whilst my mum was receiving care down in Bath.
Oh. So, it's Nisi.
Yeah, Nisi. Yeah.
That's what you called.
Angel.
Yeah. So that was in Rochdale. So at what age were you scouted for your football then?
So it's probably about 6 months of being in Rochdale. So my mum had 3 months of treatment and care, managed to get herself back on the right tracks. She obviously made a conscious decision to take us out of that environment, because she almost could see what was going to happen if we didn't. And we talk about that cycle. Could have been very easy for me to go down the wrong path a few times. And obviously my younger brother as well. So she then came up. We started a new life in Rochdale, which came with its challenges. Growing up in Bath, very multicultural. Never experienced racism. As soon as I, step into a new school and a new council estate, all the names under the sun, and it got into a few scraps. Me and my brother got filled in a few times.
Did you?
Yeah.
Better give as good as you get. I got that.
Do my best,
Yeah.
but I wouldn't say I'm a fighter in that sense. But yeah, it was challenging, and I suppose racism is getting highlighted now.
Yeah.
a
Did your
lot
dad
more.
prepare you for that at all? Because with regards to your mum and dad's relationship, there's a bit in the book at how your mum's family treated your dad.
Yeah. My grandma.
Yeah. And how is your grandma now? Is she?
Well, it was ignorance, I think,
Yeah.
from grandma's point of view. And we look at generations, and I'm never going to excuse racism,
No.
but you can understand where they were coming from. So
Conditioning, isn't it? Yeah.
I think that the quote was, "You've made your bed, now lie in it, Michelle." And then when we came up north, obviously we got that relationship better with. But my dad, he will have encountered racism, I'm sure. Whether he dealt with it in the right way is another thing altogether. But
Yeah.
I suppose my mum sheltered us from a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
She would have known coming north we were going to get called, nigger, packy, all the names under the sun.
Wow.
But we go back to that childhood thing. How do we deal with it? And it was water off a duck's back. She had the conversation sometimes. You've got to let it go. You've got to be the bigger person. But when you're a young kid, you can almost, the red mist descends and you can get angry and frustrated.
But
I always looked at it like, this is a blessing for me. Everyone goes on holiday.
Yeah, exactly.
To get the tan.
I love your colour, trust me.
And that was one of the conversations she had.
Yeah.
They don't understand. They never will. But I always say, sadly, she had to have the conversation that we're almost going to have to go above and beyond to get into some, rooms and to change certain things. But I'm ready for that challenge, and I fully think I'm doing that slowly but surely.
Yeah. It's funny, you're saying that about going on holiday. Hallie, obviously, because of Wes and myself and Lilia and Lola always tan really easy, and Hallie's got my skin and she hates me for it. She's like, why did I get the white skin?
She would have had to have some challenges, wouldn't she? A mixed race dad and very light, and everyone's got their own things, but everyone's an individual, aren't they? Everyone's different, and it'd be a boring place if it was all the same.
Exactly. I was just going to say as well, obviously there's a bit in book which absolutely horrified me, which clearly being at school and having to deal with what you dealt with regards to racism. Like when you were older, when you were at the bus stop. And them old guys, and they were the army guys, or they
were ex-army guys.
And they were like 70s or and they verbally, racially attacked you.
It is in that sense. I maybe didn't think about it like so. See, come up to Rochdale and I see this and I'm experiencing it. I then signed for Manchester United, which was unbelievable. But it almost gave me a false sense of status. And things did change, the dynamics changed. So I wasn't the new kid now, I was the cool kid. Everyone wanted to know me, and football is brilliant for that, in a sense of it's often a buy-in, but it doesn't mean you're any better than anybody. And then I had 6-7 wonderful years at Manchester United, and then I was released for being a bit too small. And to be fair to Man United, they did it the best way possible. They was aware of my mum's issues, so they almost spoke to my auntie and my mum prior to telling me. And then we went and had a meeting. And I'm forever grateful for that opportunity, because I never left the country up until being at Man U and going on various tournaments, and privileged. And I know it's something my mum always speaks about, that she was reluctant for me to sign, because the likelihood is that I'm going to be released somewhere along the way, and it's going to be heartache, and she's going to have to try and build me back up as a person.
So did she already kind of preempt that before? And did she say that to you?
Maybe. I knew in myself that I was physically not where I wanted to be and needed to be, and being a mum, some just shoot up, and at 15, 16, I was left behind, and I wasn't able to impact the games nowhere near as good as I should. And it's now a bit of a running joke when I go and see some of the coaches, and they'll always go like 15. And it was literally within 12 months, I managed to shoot up to like 6'1". And it's just one of those things. But I wasn't up to the standard, and I wasn't performing, and I knew that. So it was almost a sense of relief when I got released, but it still didn't make it any easier.
No, because football is a business, and speaking from experience, like we just said earlier, it becomes very apparent, especially when the club no longer has use for you, or they want to push you out. And you feel like you're in this family, because it's almost like being in the army, if you will. Like it's so regimented, isn't it? Like you everything's kind of done for you, and you're being told when to turn up, when to go home, what to eat, you know, like. And when you're released from a club, especially like United, it can be very difficult for, or even just finishing football, it's very difficult mentally to process that. Do you think there is enough help within football for players that when they're released, you know, is there anything offered to you to be able to speak to someone, like therapist wise, you know, to see how you're dealing with this? Or for me, it felt like you sort of like brought in and then spat out when they're done with you, sort of thing. And I don't know if that has changed over the years.
It's one of those, and I don't like sitting on the fence with anything, but I saw the counsellor that Manchester United gave me at the time to try before they then released me. They even went as far as sending me for a hand scan, and predicted height came back as 5'10". So that was like, right, okay.
Science, trust the science.
Yeah. And this is it. You just never ever know, do you? So there is support for footballers. And I'll also say, ego stops footballers from going to ask for support.
Definitely. 1,000,000%.
Because
Pride.
And they're aware of it.
Yeah.
Maybe not aware of it enough.
Yeah.
But you know, I've done work with the PFA. I've done work with the Premier League. I've done work with the League Football Education. And like now I do a lot of work with 16 to 18-year-olds. And my real message is, don't let football be your sole identity.
100%.
Because at some point it's going to end. And that could be Wayne Rooney. That could be, you know, someone who plays League One all their career or plays non-league.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable, and you can make a decent living out of it, but it's got an expiry date.
Yeah.
And, you know, history tells you it might come sooner than you realise.
Yeah.
So don't let it be your sole identity. Have another interest that can almost be an outlet, because it can consume you. It can, you know, dictate your week, and it's intense.
Yeah.
It's pressured environment. And I only realised, I suppose, when my agent after football, who deals with a lot of my media stuff, she said to me when it was all released and I retired and there was in the papers, that's it now. No more headlines. And I thought, now there will be headlines, but there won't be any more football headlines because football's moved on.
Yeah.
It's yesterday's news.
Yeah.
So I'm doing my best to you know, change certain things, but there is that support there. Whether it's highlighted enough is another thing altogether. And we're talking about later on in life, adults. So you've got to hold yourself responsible and accountable. And if you haven't got a plan B, knowing that you're feeling a bit worse for wear, you know, you can't train to that intensity that you wanted to, then you're holding on to something, aren't you, that is going to be out your grasp at some point.
Yeah, that's the thing, I think, with not only just like mentally, but I think financially, the investing side of things. And there's so many predators around there, like that want
everyone wants to talk to you when you're doing well.
I definitely think that should be, a mandatory to see a therapy or speak to someone while you're in the football industry to prepare people for going on and not having the football in their lives anymore, but also to give advice, good advice, not people who are getting backhanders for bringing them into the canteens to sell them like film schemes and shit, you know, but moving on to you went to Rochdale. You signed at Rochdale after that, didn't you? So you didn't give up.
No, I didn't. I did the rounds though in the Northwest. I went and looked at a lot of clubs. I trialled at Wigan and they liked me. I had a little look at Bolton, but I had a chip on my shoulder.
Oh, did you? Because of you
felt like
United.
Football owed me something, and it really didn't. It was right in the middle of my GCSEs as well. And And they told me prior to almost give me the head start, because every year, you know, hundreds of young prospects get released and it's a rat race.
Yeah.
But I reluctantly went down to Rochdale almost on the advice from a PE teacher who I respected.
Mr. Pegg.
Mr. Pegg and
Yeah.
Mr. Ayres, yeah. Two of them that had been mentors for me without me knowing. I respected them. They obviously could see that I was talented in, you know, various sports, and I had that drive and that passion to want to play. And he told me to go down to Rochdale, and I was a little bit like, that's a little bit too low for me. You know, got these. But I went down and I loved it. I almost went back 6 years being that kid in the playground.
That's
just
what it
playing
is.
free.
The love of the football. Yeah.
And that's what I think everybody wants. They want freedom, don't they?
Yeah.
They want equality in a sense of a fair chance. But what you're really searching for is, you're not searching for money, because that's the byproduct. You're searching for freedom. You're searching to be able to have that autonomy to do that. But if you've got a passion and a purpose, follow that without the pressures. So I felt free, and it was a good decision. And I was in the first team by the age of 17. So from 16 to 17, I'd gone from that academy football into the lower leagues, but into real men's football. And it was a great learning curve.
So then the bad news.
Yeah. Well, 4 or 5 years of, you know, really going at it with football. And I think I played over 150 games for Rochdale. I'd met Chantel by this point, which was great for me, because there was, you know, teams in the higher leagues that were looking at me, and I did get carried away a little bit, got a little bit gassed up. I never really slept very well after games. I was always had that energy. So I tended to find myself with my friends in Manchester a few too many times. Never really drank.
No.
It's never really for me. I think when I come through a door, if I can't be myself and hold a conversation down, whether it's with a guy or a girl, then, you know, you're putting up a front. And I love music. Always have. I think it's, again, goes back to mum. There was some nights as a kid where I'd come downstairs and she'd be blasting out all sorts.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, why have you not gone to sleep? But yeah, that energy was there, and not ideal. But I love music, and I'd always try and wind down. So Chantel's been my anchor, because I could have easily, I say it like a balloon, I could have drifted off, and I need that support and that anchor around me. She's a little bit older than me as well. So
much older is she?
So there's 2.5 years between us.
I love the way you described when you met each other, and she was
Didn't want to know.
Yeah.
Didn't want to know. She had a perception of me, which is fine.
Football.
Because that's probably, you know, the snippets that she's seen, but there was the discipline.
Yeah.
There was the routine. She clearly didn't know about, you know, family issues, and I'd almost tried to be, you know, the support mechanism for everybody. And sometimes the helper needs some help.
Yeah.
And she was there, and
she was successful in her own right.
Yeah,
as well.
I loved it.
Yeah.
Independent.
Great woman.
At first she didn't want me. She certainly doesn't need me. But I know, and she'll say the same, better off together. And some of the things that we've achieved
and got through.
Couldn't have done it on our own, even though we are both very strong, resilient people. And it's like everything, you know, success is amazing, isn't it? But success with a team is what it's all about. And she came at the right time, and she gave me the opportunity to take her out, and slowly but surely
won
change.
her over.
Yeah, it was a graft. And I don't mind that, because I've grown up around women, not having, you know, I call them my guardian angels. My mum, my auntie, my cousins, you know, my sister. So for me to being around women, it's not an issue. Whereas I've seen it with some guys, we go in somewhere, boom, straight to the bar. I had 2 quick ones, right? I feel okay now. I'm confident. I'm like, wow, they're a human being. They're just like us in a lot of ways. So it was nice to have a partner, and we everything was on track. Got a house after 12 months of being together. It all happened quite quick. I knew straight away. I remember one time I left and I had like a bit of a debrief with myself, and I did a bit of reflecting, and I was like, wow, how have I got myself in so deep so quick? I was scratching my head, and I had a little wobble. But that goes down, when I look back at it, it goes self-sabotage. Could quite easily gone, you know what, I've got a good thing here, a real good thing. I'm not worthy of it. That imposter syndrome come in. And I suppose she had that element with me as well. That guard was up, and it was only until we both let them down that we could really be comfortable at being with each other. And she was, I think it was 18 months pregnant, found out, wow. She come down the stairs and said, you might need to sit down. And I did sit down. I lay down because I was
Sweating.
22. I was 22. I was a young 22. I was doing well with football. I could say things were on the rise, and I'd moved to Tranmere Rovers, which was quite a big money move. And I saw how big the club was on the Wirral, and we was flying. And it was life-changing.
Yeah.
And it changed my outlook. I was, I suppose, quite self-centered, not selfish, but self-centered, focused, absorbed in football. And yes, I had Chantel, but she had her own thing going on, which was great. So we could always, have something to have a conversation about. But being a dad, quite daunting. And like I say, I didn't really have the blueprint from not having my dad around. So I just,
But in a sense,
went
the opposite. That's what I'm saying. You've got almost like thank the
Find
the experience. I'm myself have I don't speak to my dad, and similarly witnessed him hit my mum, and everything that's happened has made me a stronger person, which I'm obviously not endured nowhere near as much as what you've had to, but it makes us, doesn't it? It makes us the person we are, definitely.
It does.
And just reading how you're saying she was a pillar of strength for you when you obviously had cancer, and bringing the food to the hospital, and it must have been so with the baby as well. And
business.
Running the business, incredible. Not taking away what you would have endured having to go through all of what you, and the isolation as well. So let's go back to you. Obviously, you were playing football, and then you knew that something wasn't right.
So,
you was getting injured, and
picking up little things. Like I say, first year at Tranmere was stop-start. Second year, I knuckled down. I said, right, I'm going to get myself in the gym. We went on holiday for about a week to Portugal. By this time, Lula's here, and I was going through all the things as parents do, those sleepless nights. Chantel breastfed, which was unbelievable, because I knew that, it wasn't crying for me. I didn't have to do the bottles, but it was tough. And then going playing and training, driving back, fatigue. And then I just noticed some lumps had popped up in the left-hand side of my neck. And I went and spoke to the club doctor. 4 days later, I sat across from a specialist. I've had a biopsy, and they told me that I had cancer, and it was Hodgkin's lymphoma. Effectively, it's a cancer of your immune system. And, well, I don't like calling it the big C, because you give it power. But when you say that C word, anybody, it kind of hairs stand up, and it rocked me hugely. Naively, I went with Chantel and Lula. We almost made a day out of it, seeing the doctor. And to sit across from a specialist when you're told that, knowing that you prided yourself on your body as a footballer, supreme athlete, whatever you want to call it, you know, playing at that intensity and that elite level, to be told something's wrong with your body and that you probably had it for 3 years was mind-blowing, and it crushed me on the spot. And I did, you know, do my best to hold it in. Went home, I was worried about telling my mum because I knew that it was going to rock her and how she was going to deal with that. Told my brother, told my agent, and then I had a duty, obviously, to tell the club, and they had a duty to tell the fans. And I went and did a talk at Tranmere 2 weeks ago, and it was the first time since I'd left Tranmere that I'd almost gotten the opportunity to set the record straight, because I did the 6 months of chemo. I was put into remission. The treatment took its toll on me physically, but mentally it was so scarring because I was on a young oncology unit. So anybody between 25 and down was having treatment. So for me to see 4 and 5 year olds having treatment with a kid that was like 1, nearly 2, I felt like I could empathise with the parents, but I just couldn't get my head around. Some of these kids had not known nothing but suffering from the day they were born.
Yeah.
And I felt like I had a responsibility to fly the flag and to try and cheer them up every time I went in.
That was
But it was so taxing.
Yeah, that's one of the parts that I've found very overwhelming and emotional. Like the thought that you must have been going through so much internally yourself, but to put yourself out there to make sure everyone else is all right. You almost like was a father figure to the kids and how
some of them knew like my story, and it's almost like they got given the heads up prior to it. And I was in every 2 weeks. So on that Monday when I'd go in, I'd try and ready myself for it. But as the treatment went on and I had to do 12 rounds of chemotherapy, I just looked at it like 12 rounds of boxing. I'm going to come with the knockout blow at the end, but I've still got to get through all the rounds.
Yeah.
And these were watching me. And
you had to put
I
a
felt
brave
like,
face on. Yeah,
that's it. Go back to that stigma and that almost narrative that we have as men, put that bravado and try and be the macho one, but relief after those 6 months.
Yeah.
P45 through the door a couple of weeks after from Tranmere though.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Yeah.
I
Just
was
what
on
you
good
need.
money, and this is where we talk about football as a business.
Yeah.
You are a product, and if you're not doing it on the pitch, then there'll be questions. And I saw it for the harsh reality that it was. I did, think I was going to be given a little bit of an opportunity to get back and try and prove my fitness, but I understood where they came from. Didn't really help me with paying the bills and whatnot.
No.
So I moved to Bury, where it was stop-start for a season. And I went under a manager there that had me before, and I come up short because I physically couldn't do it, and I was overcoming the lasting effects of chemotherapy.
Yeah.
Moved to Carlisle.
Just just going back to the chemotherapy and how, when you explain it in the book, and it's so, it destroys both cells, the good and the bad in your body, doesn't it? So it's so difficult to, come back from that as a person just going on day to day. But you then got straight back into training and you was back very quickly, weren't you?
No option. So from the chemotherapy to signing at Bury was 4 weeks. When the P45 came through the door, that was 2 weeks, and I just got the trainers back on, put some headphones in, started hitting the roads, Rocky-esque. Body was in tatters, in absolute bits, but I just went back to, the months prior. Listen, my legs are working. Yeah, I'm not guaranteed to be here. So then I went to Bury, and I had to learn to trust my body again. But there was things that I was having to overcome because it was chemo of my lymphatic system. You know, that's all the stuff that you need to repair muscles, to get rid of lactic acid. So I know it wasn't ideal, but I knew nothing else, and I didn't have anything to fall back on. We started the salon where Chantal was, you know, starting to pick things up, but I didn't want to put the pressures on her. And yeah, just needed to get back and give it a good crack. And I eventually, after 6 months at Carlisle, that's where everything started to feel a lot easier. And then at the end of that season, I sat down with my manager, Keith Curl, and he said, look, there's a contract there for you. It's not great money, but I know, and I know you now, you're not going to want to sign it because I can't guarantee you a starting place, and you're ready now. At first, I wasn't, so I would come on as a sub, play 2 or 3 games, need to come back off. He said, you're ready. And I appreciated that honesty, because he could have easily tied me in, knowing that I wouldn't have had too many options. And I had a wedding, my wedding, that we was going to get. The wedding that was booked, but it was brought 12 months forward because Chantal's dad was suffering from lung cancer. So it was like,
wow,
he's not a biological dad, but he's the man that's been there from day one.
Yeah.
And he wanted to walk her down the aisle. And I remember it was like a military operation to get him out to Ibiza where we got married, and he was on oxygen and he needed all the ventilation, and we needed to make sure everything was, you know, organised for him when he got out there. And the man showed the utmost strength that I've ever seen to get his daughter down the aisle.
Oh.
And he knew full well that he was on the clock. And I remember he said to me at the end of the aisle, it's over to you now. And he didn't really need to say anything else. But it was like, you got to look after Shan. You got to look after Ruby. You got to look after Lula, who was like, is everything.
Yeah.
And you could see the one thing that could give him energy and pick him up was Lula.
Yeah. That is
and
what
obviously
children
look at
do, isn't
Anita.
it?
Yeah, look after Anita, who is another angel and a woman that I just think, wow, I don't know how you've overcome some of the things you've overcome. And yeah, the baton was in my hand, and I was going to make sure I did my best for him. And about 3 months after that, he passed away. And again, it was something that I know that's affected Lula, because she had that relationship with him.
Yeah.
She'd almost changed when we dropped Lula off to stay with Paul and Anita. You could leave Lula at the age of 2 and 3, and you always worry what a kid would do, but she would come down off it and almost just sit with him and watch TV with him, bring her desk closer to him, show him the drawings, and it was like fascinating to see.
Yeah.
And we spent a week prior to the wedding where I looked after Paul with Lula while the girls was on the hen do. And then I was going to have my stag do in Vegas. But for me to see it, I got so much respect for what Anita was doing on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
Because it got to a point where he couldn't even get to the kitchen to, you know, make himself some food and without feeling breathless. So I found peace when he left, because that wasn't the man that I first met when I got with Chantal. And it was 6 months after that, Christmas Eve, when I got diagnosed the second time. And I just happened to go for my 3-year scan. So it was going to be the last scan that I was going to have. And he told me that the cancer had come back.
Was you suffering with
nothing.
anything else? Would you feel fit?
Unwell the first time round, you know. Anybody that doesn't know the symptoms of cancer, I was ticking all of them. So one night, woke up and the bed was drenched. So you're having night sweats, shortness of breath, that chronic fatigue. Whereas this time I was playing football, enjoying it back at Rochdale. I think we were 3rd in the league. I'd scored the week before the Christmas do. And then I just happened to go for a scan, and they told me that the cancer had come back, and it was one tumour right on my chest. So first time around, large watermelon-sized masses of tumour.
Wow.
Everywhere. In my spleen, down, you know, either side of my torso. Whereas the second time was way worse because I knew all the things that I was going to have to go through. I'd almost got the answer the first time round to why I was feeling unwell. I got blindsided. 2 years is a big marker for any cancer patient. 3 years, you feel like you're out of the woods. Whereas to be told it was anger, frustration. I remember I got a good relationship now with my doctor, and he was doing his best to tell me, you know, what was going to happen and what was going to need it to be done. But I just wanted to smash the whole place up.
I'm not surprised.
And that's not like me.
Yeah.
I'd prepare myself to go to training after the thing, and I had to then ring my manager and say, look, he's come back. Bit of an argument my side. Did it ever leave with being one tumour? It's almost like a landmine left over from a war battle.
What do you know, because the theory, I mean, I've done a little bit of research, people like Jodie Spencer, Greg Braden, neuroscientists, and they all work on the theory that, trauma causes...
Stress.
Yeah,
Defo.
Causes stress, causes a increase in cortisol and stress hormones in our body, which then causes dis-ease in the body, and subconsciously we manifest these illnesses.
Yeah.
Do you feel like because of your childhood and the traumas that you suffered, it had an impact on whether or not, you know, the fact that you actually got cancer? Do you think if you'd have been able to deal with the things that had happened to you, that it would have made a difference?
So the fact that I'm on a podcast with you now is a minor miracle in a sense of Joe of 15, 16, guard up, trust issues, wouldn't be open, would internalize things. And I now know, obviously, with everything that I've been through, it's not healthy.
No.
So I look at the things, and I'm grateful for certain things because it's what's made me the man I am and made me so resilient. But I also can look at it in a different way. I maybe didn't have the coping mechanisms back then or know how to let certain things go. So I am a changed person, and I deal with trauma and stress differently now. I never used to cry. Whereas now, you can put a tune on from time to time, and I find myself thinking, who's been cutting onions?
Yeah, that's good.
But it is. It's good for...
We are meant to cry.
I know, and it's an emotion that I say with Lula now, and it's something that I worry about with Lula is feel okay to be angry.
Yeah.
Feel okay to be frustrated.
Yeah.
Let it out.
Yeah.
Let
it
cry.
Flow. Let it flow.
Let
it
it be,
go.
because these emotions,
yeah,
they come and they go. And we talk about energies as well. Kids are the best at picking up on things, aren't they?
100%.
So I just think I used to internalize a lot of things, whereas now I feel a lot better offloading it. I feel more comfortable offloading it. And I know the strength of my support network. So I won't ever say anything to anybody if I don't mean it or if I'm not feeling it. Because loads of people complain about things that they're not willing to change.
Yes.
Loads of people, moan about certain things. And I'm a very solution-based thinker in that sense. So what are we going to do? And I say we, because once you've said it to me, I'm now going to take that on board and I'm going to do my best to try and help you. But at the end of the day, you've got to put things into action. And if we put something in place and a plan, you've got to be, the one that's consistent with that and follow through with it. And I will be the biggest cheerleader for you. And when we get to the finish line of one problem and the start of a new thing, I'll be there to, fly the flag and cheer you on.
Amazing. That's just the kind of guy you are, Joe.
It is, and I really wasn't that guy though. I always used to think, look, I got my own shit going on. I got my own problems. You do you. But if I can, lend a helping hand.
Yeah.
And I don't say that because I don't do it to everyone. I can be quite a ruthless operator as well, in the sense of you can talk the talk, but can you really walk the walk? And are you really willing to go through? Yeah. And that is what it is. It's putting the work in. There's a process.
So when
No
you got
shortcuts.
when you got diagnosed again, and you did have the chemo again,
Yeah.
didn't you? And this was more of an aggressive form of
Yeah.
chemo as well, because it
Stem
was a
cell
second
transplant, yeah.
And you actually broke the record, didn't you, for the recovery of that?
I'm not going to say broke the record, but when I went into isolation and I was going to have the stem cell transplant, I'd had 2 rounds of chemotherapy, and we then went away and we took some time out in Spain. And the doctor told me in the middle of that the cancer had turned off. So it wasn't showing signs of growing anymore. So I was like, well, why have we got to do the stem cell transplant? And he was like, because we want to make sure. And I remember having the phone call with him, and I was coming down in a lift, and this giant of a man came to me. He's like 6'6", 6'7". And I was watching Vikings, the box set, and I could tell he was like Scandinavian. And he came across and he was like, what are you thinking, young man? You've got a massive smile on your face, but you look like you're pondering. I was like, yeah, I've just been told like the best news ever. He was like, I felt comfortable telling him for some reason. I was like, I've just been told that, you know, I'm effectively cancer-free, but I've got to undergo some more treatment. And I'm looking at it as the floors are going down in the hotel, and I'm going seeing Chantal and Lula at the pool. And he gave me this little Bible, this little book, and he said to me, you're a child of God. Do you believe in God? And I said, I don't think I believe in God as such. I think there's a higher purpose and a higher being. So I class myself as spiritual. And he said, well, take this and look after it if ever you need to look at it. And as I kind of left to go out the lift, I looked back, vanished. And I'm an observant person. And I couldn't see him. And I'm talking 6'7" mountain with long hair and this massive beard. And he'd gone, and Chantal said to me, what's happened? I told her, and she was like, wow. And I said, I've just spoken to Dr. Gibbs and Professor Radford. They told me that, you know, cancer's gone, but I'm still going to have to go through with the stem cell transplant. So it was at that point where I thought to myself, I'm going to be all right here.
Yeah.
But I've got to go the whole hog.
Yeah.
I've got to do it. So the first 7 days of the stem cell transplant were hell.
Yeah.
10 days, I hit a brick wall. No shame in saying I was very close to throwing the towel in. And I had a conversation with Chantal, because your visitors are few and far between and you can only have a handful. So I had my mum, my brother, Chantal, my best mate, and I left the 4th one open because I knew I was going to need Lula at some point. But any children was not supposed to be anywhere near that room, because what it effectively does is strip your whole body down to nothing. So no blood cells, no white platelets, no antibodies. So any infections could be fatal. But I'm a big believer in the mindset
100%.
and the mentality. And
Yeah.
we all know that it's all connected.
Yeah.
And I was doing everything possible. You know, we talk about positive self-talk. We talk about affirmations, what I was consuming in regards to
the plant-based diet. Yeah.
music, food, what I was watching on TV. I watched a lot of comedy. It's good for the soul.
Yeah, I've been to Tony Robbins actually, and the guy that did one of the talks talked about his grandma was going to be told that she had so many weeks to live, and he basically said, do you not tell her that?
Yeah.
And he made sure that he literally stayed by her bedside and put comedy films on, so it made her laugh, and she lived for don't know how many years after, but they were going to put a time limit on her life, and that's what happens, isn't it? Mentally.
It is, and you spoke about it earlier, and I've seen people almost been told that across the bedside. You know, you've got 3 weeks to live, you've got 3 months to live. And I've literally seen the lights in their eyes go off like that.
Yeah.
I've seen it. And I didn't want it to ever be me.
No.
But I knew mine was flickering now. So I said to Chantal, look, I'm really struggling. It's our first wedding anniversary the next day. She came in, she got me some trainers, because everyone's got their vices and their issues. And for me, I love trainers. I think it's a part of a person,
Oh my
and you
God.
can tell so much.
Like
from
my
shoes.
Hallie. Yeah, she's obsessed with shoes.
And I
It's
love
weird.
it. But what I like is if they know where that trainer came from.
Yeah.
And she brought me in some
Don't
trainers.
Don't get it.
You might not, but I'm sure
Shoes
you've got
and
a few
bags,
shoes.
yeah.
And she came in with a massive balloon saying the Thompsons. And I looked at her, I'd forgotten. I'm not forgotten, but the days had gotten away from me. I'd been literally living off machines and blood transfusions and whatnot. And I said to her, the only thing I can give you, Shan, is the present, is the now.
Yeah.
Yeah? I've got nothing to give you but me.
That's the most precious thing you could give
It is. And she said, that's enough for me. It always has been.
Oh.
And we sat watching Love Island. We've turned the TV on, and with the chemo, bright lights was affecting my eyes, so I didn't watch that much TV. I couldn't really concentrate. Everyone say, read. So I listened to a lot of stuff. We sat watching Love Island. I got all these young couples telling each other they love each other after 2 weeks to get out of one house or whatever it was. And I just remember saying, don't have a clue what they're fucking talking about. Here we are through sickness and health, 12 months on after everything that we've been through. Do we deserve it? No. Do we class ourselves as good people? But will we get through it? Yeah. And I said to her the next day, it was Father's Day, come the day after. So I said, tell Lula that she's going to come and see me to prepare her. So she told her, and that night before she came in, she wet the bed. And she noticed that a little grey hair had popped up in her head.
Oh.
And she said this to me on the phone at the morning when she come in, and I said, like, wow. I put the phone down and I burst into tears. What I did is I got myself out of bed. I went and had a shower. I prepared myself as best as possible, knowing that she was going to come in after school. And she came in, and I could tell she was shocked because by this time now, I lost all my hair. And I was bald, I was weak, I was as frail as that picture as you see on the front of the book. And that was me in all my glory. And I'd almost been stripped of my identity, my dignity. But if the one person I couldn't be myself in front of was my little girl, then, she came in, she was fascinated with Doc McStuffins at the time, and she looked like her, so she's got the stethoscope off the nurse. She's checking my heartbeat. She's looking at the machine. She gave me some grapes. And like you mentioned, Chantel brought me all the food in throughout it all. And that we'd made that decision to go plant-based as a family. And it was something that I was really struggling to deal with because I couldn't keep any of the food down.
Yeah.
And my weight had plummeted now. I was 9.5 stone, and usually I'm around near 13. So I was skin and bones, and I was wearing a tracksuit, and I could see Lula was desperate to ask me a question. And then out of nowhere, as children often do, that purity and that naivety, she just said, "Daddy, you're going to die." And again, it just knocked me for 6. I was like, wow, regroup, give her the best answer possible. And I'll always say to her, and I say to people, look, you give it your best shot and you come up short, then you can look that person in the mirror and say, I gave it everything, and you've got no shame in, failing or coming up short. And I just told her that. I said, look, Daddy's going to give it his best. And she knew when I told her I was going to give it my best. And she said, right, well, make sure you listen to the doctors. And within 3 days of having that meeting, that board meeting with my team, all my blood shot up through the roof.
Wow.
0 to, the markers that was I needed to be at. I managed to keep some food down. I knew that night once I went to bed, I set my alarm for the first day. And I said, I'm going to get up no matter how hard it is to get my head off the pillow. I'm going to get myself showered. I'm going to clean my teeth. I'm going to look myself in the mirror, which I'd not done for a long time. Bit of a joke. I had like bits of spare hair there, but no one had told me I had a massive bald patch at the back. So Chantel came in with the clippers and took it all off and, bicked it. And I stopped being sick. And I was violently sick with chemotherapy all the time. It's something foreign, you know, pride myself on being quite a fit person and a healthy person. Came in, did what it needed to do. It wiped out a load of good cells as well, and we needed to get it out. And I always knew I was going to come with all this green goodness with the plant-based stuff. I couldn't quite hang my hat on it, but we were going to come with a toxic chemo, and it was going to meet in the middle, and I was going to take the brunt of it and suffer the consequences later down the line. But to come out after 18 days, and I spoke to the doctor and said, what's the quickest you've ever known anybody come out? And he was like, 21 days. That was that footballer mindset. I've got a target. I've got something to try and get to. And I know there's a young boy that I've been and visited on a stem cell transplant that came out after 15 days now.
Wow.
And I've got a lot of respect for Ben.
Yeah.
And it was weird because in lockdown, we managed to get away to Cyprus, and he was in the hotel. I'd not seen him since I'd saw him on the ward, and I gave him my book, the original copy, because his mum had seen me on the corridors one afternoon, and he said, Joe. I said, because I didn't quite recognise him. He looked miles better now. He said, it's me. And then I clicked, and he gave me a massive hug, and I don't think he won't mind me saying we both, had a little cry.
Yeah.
And it was just amazing to see him back, doing what he should be doing. He's 18.
Wow.
And he was going partying and stuff like that. And I thought, there's a time and a place. Yeah. And, you'll realise that it's not the be all and end all, but for him to be living his life and, living it to the fullest was like, that's what it's all about. And I got back to playing football after it. Amazing.
Yeah.
Rehab was an absolute nightmare. Uphill battle. But the support that I got from Rochdale the second time around was unbelievable. And for me to obviously finish my career with the goal on the end of the season that kept us up was just my give back to the boys.
That's amazing.
And the club. And I think the story in the headline was the ultimate survivor keeps his team up, and I'm humble enough to know there's many a person that's, overcome cancer. But if I can help anybody along the way in the journey with whatever setback it is, I'll do my best. And I almost find the work that I do now within football, businesses and schools more rewarding than football.
Definitely, because of the journey you've been on and being able to put yourself in and help other people. So I did want to ask you, Joe, after everything that you've overcome and going down the chemo route for the second time, understanding how the body works, and as you said, like you did incorporate all different things with regards to changing your diet and your energy, and did you say you had Reiki as well?
Yeah.
Would you, having that time again, knowing what you know now, because I mean things that like sound therapy and healing for cancer that is ongoing in different countries that have, would you do anything different?
The kind of normal route. It's a good question. Someone asked me, would I have chemotherapy again? Probably not, because gone through it once, gone through it twice. If it was a third time,
it's not working.
It worked?
Yeah.
And that's what I said before about the argument. Was it back or did it ever leave?
Yeah.
I also think that certain things, like we spoke about, do trigger, and certain things turn it off as well. So they'll always say, everyone's got cancerous cells in the body, everyone's got different things, and certain things will trigger it. So we know that lifestyle as a contributing factor to health. We know that diet has a contributing factor to your overall health. We've spoken about, stress, not dealing with childhood traumas, emotional trauma.
I think being open to the fact that you're able to heal alternatively, other than anything that comes from the medical industry.
100%. And I said it before, didn't I? It's got to come from you and your mindset.
Yeah.
You've got to have peace of mind. So if you think chemotherapy is going to work for you and you truly believe that, then that chemotherapy will work for you. If you think a plant-based diet will work for you, like I did, understanding the alkaline side of things and the acidity side of things, I knew that it was going to meet in the middle and there's going to be a war. And it was almost more about a war of the chemo and the diet instead of the actual cancer. So would I have done anything different? Maybe not, because then it wouldn't be the person I am today. But I was always open-minded to alternatives. So the first time around, I did loads of juicing, and that helped me with my energy. And you've got to remember, I've got bloods during, I've got bloods pre, I've got bloods post, and my markers now are better than they've ever been. And that's before the first time, that's during the remission, that's after its second time, better than they've ever been. So I clearly believe in what I'm doing. It's clearly working. And I left and retired from football with my body mass, well, my muscle mass the highest it's ever been, my body fat the lowest it's ever been. And I fundamentally couldn't train as much as I'd like to because of the chemotherapy. So there was always going to be consequences, and there's a big long list, you know, there's no getting away from it. Some people die from chemotherapy. But society says if you have cancer, you go see the doctor gives you the answer and the diagnosis, and this is what you do moving forward.
Yeah. And
but
some
I was more open-minded and holistic with that approach.
Yeah, some insurances don't have to actually cover you for anything other than chemo as well, don't they? Well,
Yeah.
I think all insurances do
Yeah,
they?
yeah.
Like if you said, I want to take this insurance because I want to go to China and have this sound therapy healing for cancer that's been proven, oh no, we won't cover for that. We'll only cover for chemotherapy.
And that's the thing, but you have to be open-minded.
Yeah.
You have to look at alternative ways because it's got to work for you, and you know, one doesn't fit all.
Yeah.
I've seen people sail through chemotherapy. I've seen people change their diet for the better. I've also seen people not change their diet. So I'll always say, if someone's been through cancer and I'm sat across the way from you, what have you changed in your life since?
Yeah.
Because what's the phrase about, you know, if you keep doing the same thing, sanity, insanity, where are we at? You've got to change something.
Yeah.
Whether your mindset changes, whether you change your job, whether you change your purpose and you find a different path, something's got to change. Because in the end, I started to think all this physical impact and all the things that I've been through, realistically, I don't need to prove anything to anyone anymore. I don't need to prove anything to myself. First time round, I wanted to prove the doubters wrong. They didn't think I could get back to playing. Second time round, I wanted to prove myself right. But what have I changed since then? And I said to you before, no matter if I'm doing a talk for a football club, corporate, school, I go in and I think, go and make an impact on somebody's life, a lasting impact. Not just a goal on the end of the day of the weekend where next week, everyone's buzzing about it. Next week we lose, everyone's, you know, on your case.
Yeah.
And it just meant for me after the second time in particular, football's a game.
Yeah.
Play free. It's a game that you love.
Yeah.
Enjoy it. Be in that moment like we've spoken about, because who knows what's around the corner.
I know we're a bit short on time, but we can't talk about the next trauma that you've had to endure just recently.
Yeah.
Your little boy that sadly didn't quite make it.
No.
Dre.
Yeah.
The universe definitely continues to throw curveballs at you. But...
And I spoke to someone before and they said, look, I witnessed one of my teammates carry his little girl down the aisle. And I remember thinking, wow, that is the most inspiring thing I've ever seen, because I was wondering how he had the strength to do it. And there's no real formula to it. You never quite know. But I'm the passenger this time. Chantel went through all of that. I went through it with her. But for her to go, well, it's 3 days away from his due date, and for her to go that far as mum, which I was always envious of. So I think it's magical.
Yeah, it is.
And she knew how much it was going to mean to us all as a family. It was beautiful, and I say that in a positive way. But for her to find the strength to be told 2 days prior that his little heart stopped beating and she's going to have to give birth to him, I was like, wow. And I honestly didn't know what to say to her. So to witness it was like, wow. I don't know if she knows where she found that strength. And then Lula came in after it because she wanted to meet a little brother. Again, my head just went.
Yeah.
It's like witnessing all of this. So I say I went through that trauma, and it's obviously something that we're going through now. But that was like, I've climbed some mountains along the way. But Chantel's been there for me.
Yeah.
And this was now my time to be there for her.
Totally.
It's okay. And I just know now I've got to honour him. And it's like, I wear this now every day. Because we were going to call him. And he is called because he's here, he's present.
Yeah, it's always going to be present.
Dre Phoenix. And it was something that after, we start to grieve and heal, it's the rebirth. And we're fully aware that he's with us. I bear a lot of scars, and I've almost got a lot of psychological scars that I have to deal with. And to the outside world, you look at us and everything that's going on, perfect family. But there's a backstory to everything, isn't there?
Yeah, there is.
And I feel responsible to honour him, because I know moving forward, he's going to give us the strength. He's going to give Luna the strength and the protection. And she's very open and honest about saying, look, I was at the park the other day and a little girl said to her, have you got any brothers or sisters? I'm an only child. And she said, yeah. He's up there though. And I was like,
wow.
So it was, unbelievable to see that. And if they can have that strength, then I can find the strength within me to overcome, it in due time. But it's grief, it's healing, and it's something that time is a healer, but it's something that I know that will always, be within our heart. But it's the fact that it's in our heart, that it's there. And I think after it all, now knowing what we know, he'd almost gone I know for a fact he'd gone as far as he could go. And he wanted us to see him in
the physical body.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. But we get back to the, that spiritual side of things. Who are we?
Yeah.
This is the vessel.
Yeah.
The spirit that lives within us.
Yeah. The light body, the energetic.
Yeah. And
the soul is always going to be there.
Yeah.
The angel,
and he's, transcended, and we'll no doubt see him rise in various ways. And it was a couple of days after where I went out for a walk with my friend, and it's a run that we tend to do. And I was just walking, and there was a little, I don't know how to explain it, a little glimmer of light in a bush. And I went back and I said, just hold the dogs for a second. I went back, it was a CD. And I had my finger over the top of it, and I could see the chronic, and I looked at it, and it was Dr. Dre. And I was like,
wow.
Of all the CDs
stuck in a bush.
Here, I was like, wow, in a bush.
Yeah.
I probably could have walked past it, could have ran past it before. But on that day, to see it, and to see it with someone as well.
Yeah.
Like in the moment, and I remember Az looked at me, and he kind of looked at me, looked up at the sky, and he was like, fucking hell. And I was like, I am so glad you were here, because if I'd have said this you
To
know,
anyone,
like I'm doing
yeah.
now, they would have been looking to put me in the private. But it was a sign.
Message,
It
yeah.
really was. And it was what I needed. And it was that reassurance that he's around us all the time. And that could have been any CD, and somebody had, you know, thrown it out the car. It might have been broken. It might have not been working, but it was certainly the tonic or the chronic that I needed at that time to give me the strength to go on.
Yeah, and it seems like you've had the encounter before with the guy in the lift.
Yeah.
And that obviously just shows that, you know, you've connected on a divine, spiritual level.
And after everything, it is, you talk about those levels.
Yeah,
Different person.
yeah,
I really am.
Yeah.
For the better. Not saying I'm perfect, by no means. I still make mistakes, but I
We
live
all
by a
do.
mantra.
Yeah.
Don't live life to survive, live life to thrive. And there's going to be those hard times. You know, it's a rocky road. It's going to be an uphill battle.
yeah,
But when you reach those mountain tops, enjoy the view,
yeah,
cherish the moment.
definitely.
You know, a lot of people live through the phones, and I get it. There's an opportunity to do things and have a platform, but savor the memories, because
Yeah.
those are the only things that are going to keep you going through the hard times. And you really need to harness and bottle them up. And some of the things that I've experienced, I really do wish I could put it in a bottle and, you know, share it with others. And I do my best to. And I think when I'm, you know, up on stage doing various talks and conferences and doing small gatherings with people,
Yeah.
I walk through a door now, and they've always been my thing. As soon as I walk through a door, go and, you know, light up the room.
Yeah.
Walk through a changing room, go and be someone. Come home, go and be the best dad possible. Go out for a date, go and be the best husband possible. It's just something that is my little triggers, and that's how I get through life. So hopefully I've done the podcast justice, and I just want to say thank you for giving me the opportunity, because it's probably the first time I've been able to get something off my chest in regards to what we've experienced with Dre. And
Yeah.
I often feel the fraud being sat in the seat, because it should be Chantel,
Oh,
but she deals
I'd love
with
to have
things.
her on. Yeah, well,
she deals
definitely,
with
'cause
things.
all the stuff that she's doing and all the businesses and all, like, she's just incredible. And now with the homeschooling that
She
I've
never
got Lola
stops, though.
doing, she doesn't.
never,
she is
ever
incredible.
stops.
But yeah, it is. You're just such an inspiration, and like you were just saying, and like about bottling up the moment, and what you said to her in the hospital was, "I can give you as the present," and that
be
is enough, and
authentic.
be
Yeah.
in the present, because that's the only thing that counts, isn't it? Definitely.
Tomorrow's not guaranteed.
Yeah.
Yesterday's gone. Don't live in the past, but definitely learn from the past and try and go make a difference.
Great,
Yeah.
yeah, great words from a very wise man.
Good job you didn't say old.
No,
I definitely feel a little bit older than I should do. But even that, the aches and the pains,
yeah.
just be at one with them.
Oh, sending love to you and sending love to Dre,
Definitely.
and obviously he's always going to be around you and your family, watching over you, like you said. So thank you so much for opening up and being so honest and raw and beautiful, because you are, because you know, inside and out. Thank you.
No, really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this podcast, please do like and subscribe and click the notifications button if you want to get notified when I release another podcast. This podcast is sponsored by Memon Global. If you haven't already thought about protection for your children and yourself from EMF radiation, we do live in a toxic world right now, and Memon Global does offer a range of products to do just that. So check them out at www.memon.global.